Hi, everyone. My name is AJ Rettger. I'm the author of Oathbreaker, and I'm joined today by esteemed grimdark author Michael Fletcher. So, thank you so much for joining us today. Really
All right, thanks
appreciate
for
it.
having me, man.
So, before we get started, you like usually the people I have on the show, they have like one or two books. You are the difference. You have so many books.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's been a crazy couple of years. I think I just finished writing my 11th book, which will come out probably April 2022.
holy crap! So, the big series is at least that I've heard of is the Obsidian Path.
Yeah.
So can you kind of walk us through like the trailer or like the synopsis of it without giving anything away for the readers,
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's really difficult not to give something away, but
or at
I'd
least the
say it's
first book? The
yeah,
first book, at least.
the first book is called Blackstone Heart, and I mean, really the idea of the whole series was sort of like let's flip the the evil emperor trope a little bit, and let's maybe tell the story from his point of view.
Okay.
With the idea there's not necessarily there are no bad guys. Everyone's kind of trying to do what they think is the right thing, and mostly failing miserably.
Yeah, that sounds like typical grimdark.
Yeah.
But I love it. Like it's on my TBR list since I became an author. Like I just met all these amazing people. I'm like, man, I've never read so many books in such a short time in my life. And it just seems like every day I find a new book from another author that I just want to continue.
Yeah,
So yeah.
there's an insane amount of stuff out. I mean, with the self-publishing, it's so easy to put out a book,
Mm-hmm.
which amazing because never before have we had sort of like that kind of opportunity. But it also means sometimes you have to weed through some stuff to find the good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of self-publishing, what was your self-publishing journey like?
So I started writing my first book in 2008. 2013, I found a very small Canadian publisher called Five Rivers. They released a book called 88, which was later became Ghosts of Tomorrow, like a cyberpunk novel for me. It sold, I think, maybe 32 copies. My second book landed me an agent. It landed with Harper Voyager, got published worldwide in English, translated into half a dozen different languages, um, and totally flopped. So that's Beyond Redemption, the first of the Manifest Delusions novels.
Okay.
Critically, really well received. Sales wise, it just didn't go. So they passed on the sequel. And as I'd already written it, I figured I might as well self-publish it. And at that point, I had no expectations. I thought I was basically done as a writer. Like I got my one shot with the big guys, and it didn't fly. Um, and released The Mirror's Truth, which is the sequel to Beyond Redemption. Self-published it. Um, it won a Stabby over at Our Fantasy for best self-published novel that year. Appeared on like a ton of bestseller lists and actually like sold really well. And at that point, I kind of realized maybe self-publishing was a viable path for me.
Mm-hmm.
Threw myself into writing more stuff. So
Nice.
I
Yeah.
kind of I didn't go into it quite willingly, but once I was in there and realized how well it could work, um, I like went after it like crazy. And you gotta remember, like that's 2016 was The Mirror's Truth came out.
Okay.
Um, there were a lot of years there where basically all the book sales would just kind of pay for the cover art for the next book, and it was something I was doing. It was very much a hobby at that
Right.
point. It wasn't really putting money in the bank. After an entire year of book sales, there'd be just enough to cover the artists, and maybe if I was really lucky, the editor for the next book.
Right.
So I was kind of like maybe breaking even.
Nice. Okay.
But
Well,
yeah, I'm a stubborn fucker.
yeah. It's kind of how I am too. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna keep going through this and whatever. I mean, I don't have 11 books coming out, so I'm still on book one. So Maybe I'll get there too. But how did you make the decision to like? How did you persevere through that? Like just because I imagine like getting with the big dogs and you're going out, you made your break, and then like I mean that's got to be crushing just
Oh
for the
fuck yeah!
sake.
Like I it was I have some self-destructive habits at the best of times.
Okay.
And so I kind of there was a long period there where I spiraled, was extremely drunk, um, kind of plowed through an absolute shit ton of whiskey like way too quickly. Um, but then at some point you kind of you realize you just can't keep doing that, you know. Um, and kind of threw myself into writing, and books actually selling, people like I'd get you know check reviews and stuff, people actually liking the books made a huge difference, sort of kept me going.
Right.
And it's obviously it's an up and down ride. Not every book is received as well as others. um Blackstone Heart's been insane. Like I had no idea it was going to be like that. I released two books fairly close together, Blackstone Heart, and the first book in the City of Sacrifice series, um, Smoke and Stone. And I thought Smoke and Stone was going to be the big one. I thought that was the one that everyone was going to freak out about, and it totally wasn't. Like it's selling nicely and everything, which is great. But Blackstone Heart is just it's on a whole different level.
Yeah, it's just its own beast.
Yep.
That's funny. Like that's kind of how like with my book Oathbreaker, I wrote, and it's just like I didn't think anyone would read. Like, oh, my friends and family, and then I'm getting people on the internet reaching out like, I really like your book. Like, holy shit, like this is awesome. I'm like, oh my, like shit, people are reading my book.
Yeah. That's it's amazing the first time you realize that you don't actually know every single person currently reading your book. Because I mean, the first couple of years, you look at your Amazon sales and be like, two books, and be like, I know those two people. I know
Yeah,
who bought those. Whereas now it's just like I just don't know that many people.
yeah. Well, like I'm from a like I'm surprised. Like God bless my small town that I'm from. Like 300 people, Aberdeen, Saskatchewan. Uh, like the local corner store was like, we'll stock your books, and like people from like the entire town's like buying my books, and like I'm getting
Yeah.
like stopped at, like I'm kind of like a celebrity in my hometown. They're like, I love your book. I'm like, it's so weird, and like I'm not a very good people person. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
That's
kind of
awesome.
weird. Uh, so what made you start writing? Like, how'd you like become a writer? I guess.
Yeah. Um, for me, I think the start probably came from role playing as a kid. So I got into like Dungeons and Dragons when I was, I think, 13. And I immediately fell in love with storytelling. And so I mean, I'm a little fucking control freak. I had to be the GM all the time. And very quickly went from, the sort of like prefabbed packaged adventures and campaigns. I was like, this is boring. I can do better than this.
Mhm.
So I'd start doing my own world building and sort of planning these like monster campaigns, huge arcing plot lines. Basically we did epic role playing, epic fantasy role playing stuff, where there'd be some big bad guy at the end, and it would be a campaign could last like 1 to 3 years kind of thing. And that really, I think, probably led to writing, because certainly with the Obsidian Path stuff, that is all the world building is ripped from a campaign I did back in the 90s. So it's like I've been wanting to tell that story for a long time.
Right. That's actually like it's funny you say it because that's like exactly my path of how I got into writing too. Was I was the DM and I was like, I did the prefab stuff. I was like, fuck it, I can write shit better than that too. And then yeah, Oathbreaker's world actually came from one of the campaigns that the players were like, this is really interesting, really in depth. I'm like, thank you. Maybe I should try this and write a book about it.
Yeah, yeah. I think first time I tried to write Blackstone Heart was I think 1994. And I think I wrote maybe 30,000 words or so of a novel. and it was difficult. It required effort, and I was like in my 20s at that time, and I wasn't cut out for effort. It was too hard, so I gave up.
Nice. So, what is? Oh, shit! Just lost my train of thought. This went right out the fucking other ear. Oh, damn it. So, oh yeah. So I did a little bit of internet stalking on you before the interview, and I found out that you listen to a lot of heavy metal.
Oh yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you hide any references or anything like that inside your books towards
Oh
artists and
yeah, an
bands?
absolute ton. I mean, The Mirror's Truth, the second Manifest Illusions novel. I mean, the title is literally ripped from an In Flames song.
Oh, nice.
There's there's a standalone Manifest Illusions novel called Swarm and Steel. There's a couple of mentions of Swarm as a place in a couple of different metal songs. You'll catch it in some In Flames stuff and Silosis as well. Sometimes I'll actually just drop like one line, often like in dialogue or something, that'll be like literally lifted from a song, and just like probably no one will catch it, but it makes me happy.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of like little one line from a Megadeth track or something, but for sure there's a ton of metal references in there,
Yeah.
like littered throughout.
Yeah, nice. I'm the same way, big metalhead, and I put my little references in there. Like, there's one book, one monster and Oathbreaker, because I have a shit ton of monsters in that book. Called the Obzin, which is basically the Meshuggah
Yeah.
album cover of
Yeah.
Obzin. Yeah, so I was just like, yeah, I was like, that thing gave me nightmares as a kid. That album, I was like, that album cover. I'd seen my friend showed it to me. I'm like, fuck, that is the most scariest shit I've ever seen. And then later, I was like, I'm going to make it a monster in my book. So, yeah. And I know what you mean with the references. It makes you really happy when you just put that in there.
Yeah. I love the idea of, of a fellow metalhead sort of catching it, going, oh shit, I know that. I've heard that before, and
Yeah,
piecing stuff together.
absolutely. Do you hide any other references to other stuff, or just mainly the metal, like the other
Yeah,
books?
I mean, I
Or
will. These days, I've got a fair number of writer friends, so I will often like sneak little references to other writers into the books. That's probably less likely to get picked up. It's a little subtler, usually, not always. Aside from that, like I tend to in my head, most of my books are linked in some way. So there's usually references to other books I've written, and sometimes it's like very oblique and only a complete psycho would catch it. Sometimes it's a little more obvious.
fair enough. Who are some of your influences as a writer?
A huge one for me would have to be Michael Moorcock. The Elric books, Stormbringer stuff, that was kind of genre defining for me as a kid. The sort of the dark anti-hero that really shaped the kind of fantasy I wanted to write. C.S. Friedman's Coldfire trilogy, amazing. And I think she played with the sort of reality being shaped by will idea a little bit, which is very much what Beyond Redemption, the Manifest Illusions books are about. I suspect I kind of got the idea from her stuff. David Gemmell or Gemmell, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Huge. Yeah, those probably the big ones off the top.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How about you? What are your big influences?
The biggest one is Sapkowski, because I'm like the world's biggest Witcher nerd. And like, if you've read Oathbreaker, you're able to see the Witcher influence quite easily. Like, a lot of people who've read the reviews, like, this is very Witcher like, and I'm like, yeah, 100% the world is very Witcher like. And then Anthony Ryan, who I actually have scheduled to come on the channel in February, he's another big influence of mine. So it's
Yeah,
kind of cool
he's a
to,
great guy too. You'll have fun talking with him. He's a good dude.
yeah, it'll be really cool to talk with him and just talk to someone. I'll probably fangirl a little bit or fanboy a little bit and be like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you read The Pariah, his most recent?
No, it's on my list. I'm hammering through another guest's book right now, and then I think that's on next on the
Yeah,
next
I got
chopping block.
an early arc of that last year. Or was it the year before? Can't remember. Yeah, it was a while ago. But yeah, for me, hands down his best yet. I'd say it
Oh,
was better than Bloodsong.
oh, that's good to hear. The one thing that I don't like though is that because I'm a really picky eater or not picky eater, picky reader, is this I'm really intimidated by thick books. Like if it's over like 600 pages, I think Pariah is like 640 or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm just like I get so intimidated. It's like, do I
it's a
really want to start something like
it's a
that?
pretty
And
fast read. You'll plow
okay,
through it pretty fast. Like I think I killed that in 2 or 3 days. It was one of those where I stopped writing. I stopped doing my own shit and just read the book, which that's really rare for me.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, yeah. Well, I'm excited to start it next. Oh, okay, there. We lost you for a minute.
No, yeah.
Yeah, we're back. Shit. So what? I guess what would be your biggest piece of advice for young self-budding authors who haven't even like put out a book yet? Who, as I say, I want to go
Yeah,
self-published.
there's a lot. It's like go into it knowing that you're not going to get rich. Do it because you'll love it. Keep writing, keep reading. The community side of it, the social side of it is huge. It's a small community, but it's very tight. And it is absolutely worth your time, hanging out with the other self-published authors on either Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. And just chatting with people, sharing book reviews and stuff. Otherwise, just keep writing and, do it because you love it.
Solid advice. Do you ever look back on like your first book that you ever read and like you read it and you're like, oh, I could have changed like this word there and that word there, or is yours
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, there's every time I read something I've written, there's always something I can change. It's always you never really finish a book. You just hit a point where you're like, okay, I got to stop fucking around with this and put it out.
mhm,
So you kind of, I don't know, it's almost like you give up on them, because if you keep going over that same book over and over and over, you'll never get anything else out, right? So
right,
you do your best, and when you think it's good and the best you can kind of like reasonably do, you got to let it go and then move on to the next.
right. Like for me anyway, like we were before the show, we were talking about audio engineering a little bit. And for me, it's like listening back to my first mix. I'm like, oh my God, that is
Oh
like the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And now I'm doing mixes for bands. It's like, this is the best thing I've ever done. And I'm sure like in 2 years, I'll listen back to it and be like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
yeah.
And my writing's the same way. Like I'm rereading Oathbreaker and some of the short stories I wrote around that time. And I was just like, man, like I could have done so much better.
Yeah.
But,
It's for me, I mean, my first book, because I spent it, I don't know, 2.5 years writing it, probably spent another year or two editing it. Uh, it went through a pile of different editors. Um, it's actually a kind of surprisingly solid, because after that, like, you spend 4 years on one book, it better be pretty decent. The next book I think I wrote, Beyond Redemption, I wrote in a single year. And at this point, like I can bang out a first draft in like 3-4 months now.
okay.
So it's a little intimidating. You look back at something you spent years crafting, and then you're trying to compare it to something like you just wrote now. And yes, you're a much better writer now, hopefully. But you did it in 3 months instead of 4 years, so I kind of wonder whether, in some ways that first book might be a little stronger than more recent stuff. And maybe it's not. I really that's the thing. You can't judge your own books, right? You
Right.
read it and you're like, yep, that's what I wrote. I don't know. Is it any good? Not a fucking clue.
Yeah. I'm my own worst critic, and like
Oh
I
yeah.
just think everything's just I write is like subpar, and like I read, but according to Goodreads and the internet, I've actually wrote a decent book. So
It's always surprising, isn't it?
yeah,
When people, come back and they're like, this was so good. This is like, you're one of my favorite authors. Like, really? Wow. That's
yeah.
insane.
Uh, do you or not? Do you just when you're writing? Do you have like a goal? Like I gotta get like 2,000 words out today. I gotta finish a chapter today, or how does your process work?
Yeah. So when I'm in writing mode, my goal is 2,000 to 2,500 words a day, um, or 10,000 words a week. And as long as I hit 10,000 words a week, I'm good. And sometimes I'll do more, sometimes a bit less. Um, Editing, it's harder to judge because you don't have the word count. You can look at the page count, but whatever. Um, Basically, I just try and spend, call it a work day every day working on this. And so everything counts. World building time, staring off into space, daydreaming about, magic systems, all that counts. Um, but yeah, I do. I track. I have a spreadsheet. I track my word count each day, kind of to keep me moving. If you see
Right,
it's starting to drop, you got to sort of put your ass in gear.
right, for sure. So do you use like a like NaNoWriMo or anything like that, or no? Just you just personally keep track of it.
Yeah, I've got a spreadsheet in Excel I use. I
Okay,
wrote up myself, and tracks like daily word count, weekly word count, a couple other things I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean it's like a little nerd background thing.
yeah. Well, your other book that was recently released, Norliska Groans, that you co-authored with Clayton Snyder, is now a Spiff Bowl finalist. I see. So congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
How did that collaboration come out? Because you and Clayton are both pretty prolific authors in the grimdark community.
Yeah, so I was working on She Dreams in Blood at the time, the second Obsidian Path novel. I was in the middle of writing that, and I had this idea for a book for a magic system and like a basic world. Um, and so, sort of in, I guess you'd call it my spare time, I'd sort of sketched out the magic system and done a bit of world building for it. And I didn't have time really to write a book because I was supposed to be focusing on She Dreams in Blood and getting that out. And I had just read Clayton's The Obsidian Psalm novel, which is dark and very fucked up. And I really liked it. And I thought, you know what, it'd be cool to do a collaboration project. Mostly because it meant I only had to write half a book, which I was like, yeah, I can definitely barf out half a book pretty fast. So I talked to Clayton, basically texted him or messaged him and said, "Hey, dude, I have a really terrible idea. Do you want to write a book together?" And he's just like, "Fuck yeah, in." And I think we killed the first draft in like 2.5 months. It was crazy fast, like how well that worked.
So how did you kind of? I've talked to other authors about co-authoring books, and a lot of them said, "I don't know if I can do it because like I can't check my ego, or just like I know how I want to do something." How did you kind of check your egos? I guess, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word.
So yep, we laid down a set of rules before we started, and it was all about no stress. So it was like, if you decide you don't want to do this, you can bow out at any time. No one's going to be angry. That's fine. Like if it's not working for you, if you're not having fun, bail. That's totally good. No egos. We're going to edit each other's stuff. So you can always suggest things. Like for my chapters, I'll suggest for your chapters. We'll edit each other as we go. And no deadlines. So we were like, when we started, I thought this might take us a year. I was like, all right, we'll do it in the background. It'll take us, a year or so to finish this book. I was stunned at how fast we did it, but we had no deadlines, no stress, bail if you want. And then we each took one character. So I wrote one character, he wrote one character, and which worked really well because it gives you've got 2 point of view characters, and they each have like this really distinct voice because they're just written by different writers. But then because we're editing each other's chapters, it helps bring it together, give it a really cohesive feel.
Right. That's super cool. I mean, so I guess with Clayton, I asked this question before, but since you've actually done it, is there any other authors you would like to co-write with that you could pick anyone in the world?
Yeah, actually, I had a lot of fun with that. I think I got really lucky with Clayton, and like our personalities gelled really well. And we're both very sort of like relaxed people, and we're both good with like sometimes I'd get caught on an idea and go all nuts and be like, oh, it's got to be like this, and he'd be like, okay, cool. And then sometimes he'd come up with something that would like sort of change the direction of the book, and he'd get all excited, and it's like, okay, cool. And you have to be able to just sort of go, all right, let's try that. We're gonna go. You have this idea you're excited about, so we're gonna go that way.
Nice.
But for other authors, actually, I have done another collaboration. I did a serial fiction with Anna Smith Spark for a Grimdark magazine. Hasn't been released yet. That was fucking mental. Like, holy shit, Anna can write. Yeah, like she's so much better at this than I am. That's insane. I would love to do a collaboration with Crystal Matar sometime. She wrote Legacy of the Brightwash, which is really fucking good book.
Yeah, that's also on my TBR list. I've heard incredibly good things about it.
Yeah, it's also another Spiffbo finalist.
Yeah, nice little group. Another one that I think we're part of the same Facebook group, the Grimdark Writers and Readers. Holly's in there as well, which Holly Tinsley, we met at Ash and Shadow. I've had her on the show and just kind of proud for her.
Yeah, that's she's really like her book.
Yeah,
book I read that. Very good book.
I like it because like it just my writing or reading is very much focused on like medieval fantasy. So like it was a nice like palate cleanser. It was just a complete change, and it's kind of turned me on to like the whole urban gas lamp fantasy genre.
Yeah.
So yeah, she did a really great job with that. Going forward, like how do you plan like your books? Are you just kind of like me with like a dog with a stick? You don't know exactly what you're gonna do. You just kind of, if you got a stick in your hand now, you're just like, I'm going with it. Or do you plan things out like, you're gonna take, I guess, pantser or planner to short wind that answer?
Yeah, so that for the longest time I was totally pantser. I basically start a book with often like with Beyond Redemption. I had the title, and I knew basically how the magic system was going to work, and I had an idea where it should go for the end. But then it was just like pants the whole thing. These days, I'm getting a lot more into planning because I sort of want to do some more intricate stuff. And I found, especially like I just finished writing the last Obsidian Path book. So it's the third book in a trilogy. It really kind of needs to be good, and it really needs to sort of pull everything together. And I just realized I didn't think I could achieve everything I wanted to achieve by the seat of my pants. So that one, there was a lot more planning. And kind of, I have become much more of a planner than I used to be.
Do you how do you approach writing sequels and like trilogies and that? Like, because obviously like you got to try and like beat your last book and make it even better, and it's just this never ending cycle of just improving. So how do you approach that daunting task?
Yeah, I don't think too much about it. I don't sort of go into a book thinking this has got to be better. Um, I do want to do something different every time. I want to, explore different ideas. Um, I hope that I'm a better writer, but I don't actually stress about it at all. I just go into each book, I'm going to do my best every time. Hopefully, what that best is, improves. But I don't really worry about it. Um, yeah, I'm not trying to outright myself. I just
Right.
want to do the best book I can. And different books, you have to write differently. Like if you read Beyond Redemption and then Blackstone Heart, they're radically different books.
Hmm.
And just how they're told, the way the sort of like the POV characters are handled, tonally and everything. Um, I think you have to you need to put some thought into how you're going to handle that stuff. But
Right.
yeah, I don't stress about being better.
Okay. So, as a writer, are you a third person point of view or a first person?
I am whatever the story needs.
Oh,
So
okay.
most of the time, the vast majority of books that you're going to find out there right now are third person, sort of a tight third. Is really common. First person, less common, but still lots of that. For me, before I start writing, I look at the story and ask how I can best tell that story. Um, if if I feel like I need multiple point of view characters, I will go with a third person because it's easier for the reader to keep those all separate. In the case of Blackstone Heart, there is only one point of view character, and so I realized for that one, what I wanted the whole story in his head. I wanted to put the reader in his his head, see everything the way he sees it. So that one, the whole trilogy is first person.
Okay. What about Norliska Groans with Clayton? Did you guys both do first person, or because I haven't read
Nope.
it yet?
Yeah, no, that's a third person. Third person, like
Third
very,
person.
very close, very tight third.
Okay. Yeah. Again, my TBR list is fucking huge,
Oh yeah.
and I can never get through it. I think I'm gonna die with books in my coffin. Just. Uh, so what made you want to start writing grimdark of all genres? Because I think.
Honestly, I didn't. I actually still don't want to write grimdark. I don't think
Okay.
I do. I know I do, but I don't think I do. Um, so uh, my first fantasy novel, Beyond Redemption, it's on Mark Lawrence's like grimdark scale. It is the most grimdark book on there. As voted by fans. I didn't write grimdark. I wrote dark fantasy. That's what I thought I was writing. At that point, which was 2009, I'd never even heard of grimdark. Um, the first time I heard the term grimdark was 2013. I landed an agent for Beyond Redemption, and she said in an email, "The grimdark crowd are going to love this." And I was like, "What?
Yeah.
The fuck is that?" I had to Google it because I had no idea what she was talking about.
Okay.
So
Right.
I don't put any thought into grimdark or particularly genre. I do write dark stuff, obviously.
Mhm.
That's where my interests are. Those are the topics I kind of want to explore. But I'm not sort of intentionally a grimdark writer like at all.
Okay. I was the same way. Like when I wrote my book, Oathbreaker, I was writing dark fantasy. I said I'm writing dark fantasy. Like my heroes or my influences, and my mentor at the time, Sky. She was just like, "This is super grimdark." I'm like, "What the fuck is grimdark?" I honestly thought it was a typo. I thought she just merged two. I thought she meant like this is very grim and dark, and so I actually had to Google it like you did, and I found out it's a whole community and genre of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I mean, which is great because they have absolutely adopted me in my books. And that the grimdark community is probably the vast majority of my book sales. So that's
Mhm.
awesome. It's just not something I'd ever sort of thought about or,
Yeah,
certainly hadn't done intentionally.
Is there anything in your books that you approach and like you reread it or you're writing like this is too dark, or is it no holds bars, everything's fair game?
Um, there are things I won't write because I guess I don't want to. There's certain kinds of violence that I just don't want in my head.
Right.
So for sure, there are places I won't go. I have written scenes and then deleted them because I was like, that is just too fucked up. Um, on the other hand, I have also written a couple of scenes and then kind of grudgingly left them in because the book needed it. Like it needed to happen. The reader needed to see it happen, for me to tell the story the way I wanted to.
Right.
But like I have no interest in shock value. I think it's kind of boring.
Yeah.
I'm more about I want to tell the story.
Right. Fair enough. Speaking of fellow self-published authors, trying to changing gears here, who are your like self-published authors that you got to look out for, you think, who are new to the game and are just putting out outstanding work?
I mean, really, you could just look back at the last 7 years of Mark Lawrence's SPFBO, the
Yeah.
Spiffbo. Um, Anyone who makes it into those final 10
Mm-hmm.
out of 300 books each year is worth keeping an eye on.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There's, I mean, there's kind of like the old guard now. Dirk Ashton, Rob Hayes, Ben Galley, and there's those guys. They've been doing it for a while and doing it well. So keep an eye on those dudes as well. But really, any of the Spiffball finalists.
Okay. Do you have? I guess what was the last book that you got really pumped about to read? Like it was announced, you're like, holy shit, I really want to read it. Or are you much of a reader now because you're writing so much?
Yeah, I don't read nearly as much as I used to. I kind of stopped. I'm not going to name any names. I kind of stopped getting excited
Okay.
about books because there'd be all this hype over a book. And I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
fuck yeah, like I know these people. I'm gonna check this out. And so often they were just disappointing. Um, and part of that is I'm the problem. I have difficulty turning my editor brain off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if I grab a book and start reading it, um, often I'm picking it apart as I go rather than just sort of enjoying the story. So if the prose is maybe a little bit looser than I would like, instead of that being just a small thing, it
Mm-hmm.
drives me nuts. So that
Okay.
kills my enjoyment of a lot of books. I have a huge pile of books I have purchased, like paperbacks, because I don't do ebooks anymore. Um,
Mm-hmm.
where I bought a book, started reading it, got 50, 100 pages in, and went back, and then tossed them. Last couple of books that I have really enjoyed would be Crystal Matar's Legacy of the Brightwash, Anthony Ryan's The Pariah, Andy Weir, what's it called? Operation Hail Mary, something like that. Um, those are probably sort of like the best ones I've read recently.
Okay. More fuel to the fire of my TBR list. Just so would you ever? I know like primarily you write fantasy with Ghost Tomorrow being kind of cyberpunky. Would you ever do more sci-fi, or are you staying and you kind of found your niche with fantasy?
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I'll write more science fiction for sure. I've got
Okay.
a very noir science fiction novel kind of floating around in the back of my head right now. Um, Not sure when I'll get to it. Also, kind of, I'm curious. So, there's a science fiction version of the SPFBO now.
Yeah.
I've got a book. So, Ghosts of Tomorrow is in that, and the group it's with. It's made it at least to their top 10.
Okay.
If it actually makes it to the finals, which would be insane, um, that will probably help motivate me to write some more science fiction.
Right.
because it's nice to follow success.
Yeah. Fair enough. For me personally, like I'm just not a science fiction guy. I
Hmm.
can't get into it. Like this is a kid, or I say kid. I'm a man now. I'm not fucking 16. I've never watched Star Wars. Haven't seen a single Star Wars. Never seen Star Trek. Just none of that interested me. I was
Yeah.
always like, give me the swords and bows and monsters and shit like that. So, but yeah, I mean, everyone says you'd be so good at science fiction. Like I know my parents were like, oh, you should write like with technology. You have such a fucked up mind, and you should totally like write with stuff like that. I'm like, man, I don't got the, I guess, motivation to do that.
Yeah. I kind of like it's not quite crossing genres, taking ideas from one genre and then twisting them into the other.
Mhm.
So like Norilska Groans, the base magic system is around you can store memories or skills in stones. So you take it from the person and store it in the stone, then somebody else can access it. Um,
Okay.
all that came out of a bunch of like cyberpunk short stories I wrote ages ago. And then I was sitting around and thinking, hey, actually, that would make like a cool magic system. I'll take that science fiction idea and use it in a fantasy world. Um, yeah, I think you could kind of flip it either way.
Yeah, that's super cool. Actually, I can't wait to read that book though. Oh, yeah. You probably dominate probably at least like a good 20% of my TBR list. Because everyone's like, I always ask people, oh, what's some good grimdark? Because like when I'm reading, I always I read and I'm a little disappointed by some books because they're not dark enough for my taste. And I was like, you gotta read Michael Fletcher. You gotta read Michael Fletcher. That guy's got just such a an imaginative, dark imagination. And so like, yeah, you dominate like at least a good 20% of my pile.
Cool. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Norilska Groans might scratch that dark itch for you.
Yeah, the other one that's that dark itch is everyone's telling me to is Gunmetal Gods. I had Zamil. He was my first
Mhm.
guest on the channel, and I still haven't got to it. I feel bad. I mean, that was over a year, almost a year ago, and I got to get to it. I've
Yeah,
heard, yeah, his is dark. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't read it. It's on my list, but he's a good dude. He's he's great to chat with.
Yeah, awesome. So, what is the most challenging aspect of being a self-published author? I
Hmm.
guess.
Part of it all comes down to you, right? So if you fail, it sucks because there's only one person you get to point the finger at.
Right.
Um, but there's a huge amount of luck involved, which everyone kind of ignores. Like right now, I'm self-publishing and kind of uh, doing fairly well at that. But like I understand how lucky I have been. Um, first landing a book with a major publisher, like that gave me a huge boost. I think had that not happened, um, no one would have heard of me. Like I could have written all the same books and self-published them, but that Beyond Redemption gave me a level of visibility that I otherwise could not have achieved, or at least not as quickly. So luck is huge. And even now, like you look at Spiffbo, Norelska Groans landed in the finals. But I suspect had it landed with any other review group other than a fantasy book critic, I kind of doubt it would have made the finals. But we got lucky. It landed with a group of reviewers who were really, really in the mood for some Russian noir fantasy, which is crazy, right? And
Yeah.
same Blackstone Heart the year before it came second in the SPFBO. Um, it landed in the right group. There was one of the other groups hated the book. Had it landed with them, wouldn't have made the finals at all. So I'm the luck aspect. Can be frustrating. I have been lucky, but like I get, I understand that I've been lucky.
Right.
Did
Yeah.
I have no idea if I actually answered your question or if I just wandered all over the place there.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, luck, I think, yeah, that's a huge aspect of the self-publishing process that no one talks about. You're absolutely right. And that is probably the hardest part of it because it's something out of your control.
Yep.
You essentially don't have any control. You could be the best marketer, the best writer, best editor, everything, but you got to have that certain amount of luck to get
Yep.
there. And that's probably the most frustrating part about
Yeah.
being an
And I mean,
author.
the only thing you can do is kind of try and give yourself as many opportunities to be lucky as you can. And that means writing new books, talking to new
Mhm.
people, making new connections. You know, you increase the odds of getting lucky.
Absolutely. I know I'm learning that lesson the hard way. Like I'm very much an introvert and like I don't like talking to people. I'm very much the cliche writer of like just hide in my room, hammer out a manuscript and like
Yeah.
don't talk to
Oh,
anyone.
yeah. Same. I
And
not shy, but totally introverted.
yeah,
Happily will spend weeks and months in my office just writing,
yeah,
but so the social media is good for that because there's a level of distance
right.
where you're not actually interacting.
Yeah, true. Is there anything on your like writer bucket list that you want to essentially achieve? Like for myself, I'll give you an sense of what I mean by this question. For me, I would love to do like a fantasy con and like have like a little booth with my books and like meet people at like a
Yeah.
convention. That's on my bucket list, and that's probably like my biggest one that I'd love to do at some point in my career.
Yeah.
What's
Like close to that, I'd love to go to a con sometime and actually just hang out in person with a bunch of other writers at the bar. The actual
okay?
con, like I've been to a couple of conventions. I hate them. It's too many
Okay,
people. I can't take it.
okay,
But hanging at the bar con, we call them. Love to do that. Kind of more directly book related. Yeah, I really just want to keep sort of keep building what I've started. I would like to see it continue to grow over the next couple of years. And
right.
you know, right now my big dream is to not go back to the day job. And as long as that
Right.
happens, then I'm happy.
Fair enough. The day job's always a grind.
Yeah.
Like I know when I go and work at my day job, all I think about is my writing. And when I get
Yep.
home, and then after I work 8 hours and I get home, I'm like, I don't have the energy to write.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I mean. I used to uh I'd write in the morning before I went to work because I was the same. By the time I got home from work, I'm just beat. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd wake up an extra 2 hours early, write 2 hours every morning before I went to work. When I was at work, I took like this crappy little laptop with me. Anytime no one was looking at me, I'd be fired open and get some words down. Uh, I wrote during every break. I never ate lunch because I just write straight through lunch, and that was the only way to sort of to keep things moving for me. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that point I'm working a day job, a dad, family. Still managed to put a book out every year.
Yeah, that's impressive.
But
That is really impressive.
you got to be a little crazy and very dedicated.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're trying to balance all those aspects of life, you gotta like I know a lot of people who said, "Oh, I've tried writing a book and I just can't balance everything." And then I'm like, you gotta want it. You gotta want it real bad.
Yep. Yep, for sure.
And but that's like with anything, like being a musician, being an artist of any kind, you gotta push yourself for that. Oh, fuck again. Train of thought just fucking left my goddamn head. But while I try and recover from that lost train of thought, there's a question I ask everyone that comes on my channel. It is not book related. I am just taking a survey. I have a spreadsheet. Would you rather fight an orangutan once a year or a chicken every time you get into your house?
Oh, chicken for sure. I
That's
don't think I'd survive a fight with an orangutan.
there's
Chickens,
been two,
however, I grew up on a chicken farm.
yeah.
I'm a farm boy. I could kick the shit out of a lot of chickens.
Yeah. I've had two authors say they take the orangutan, and I'm like, really? They're
Yeah,
like,
that's
oh yeah,
insane. No way.
I can fuck
Orangutan will
her.
fuck you up.
See, I'm an orangutan guy. I'm gonna fight an orangutan, and then my friend made me look up like the tail of the tape, and I'm like, oh god, I would die in like 10 seconds if I fought an orangutan.
Yeah.
Like their grip strength's like 500 pounds. Like it's just insane. So chicken for Michael Fletcher. I'll have to add that in.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about asking Anthony Ryan that question. I feel like he's gonna be an odd question for him.
I'm sure he will take it in stride.
Probably raise a questioning brow. So going forward with your books, is there anything that you like have ideas to try and like fuck, I don't even know how to word this question. Is there anything like you're, I guess, excited to try that's completely different? Or have you kind of just
Yep.
okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said before, like I want every book to be different, right? I have no interest in writing the same book over and over. So I've got a couple of books on the go right now that I've got to get off my plate before I can start on this next project. But I do have what I think will be a very insane fantasy novel coming up next once these current series are done. And it's very different. Like no human characters. It's going to, for me, this will be a step outside of my comfort zone for sure.
Right.
So yeah, definitely excited about new stuff.
When you're experimenting with new stuff, do you try and just focus on different world building, or do you ever try and like fuck with your prose or anything like that?
Yep, both. So the one I'm talking about, it started with a world building idea. So I did the world building first because I had this sort of like very crazy idea for a world. I don't want to go into details.
Yeah.
And out of that world building came the characters. They kind of the world sort of when you build your world in enough detail, it kind of tells you what your characters are going to be like. So the characters, non-human characters, came out of that. And then your characters kind of tell you how you're going to have to write it. And I think, for this one, I want to try playing with prose a little more for different characters. So there's one character where his POV chapters, they're going to be very poetic. The idea they'll be beautiful, hopefully, if I do this right. Whereas some of the other characters, you'll get this sort of like really like Hemingway-esque bluntness sort of going on, like a simplicity of prose, which hopefully is still, impactful, but a little less flowery.
Right. Okay. Cool. I am scared shitless of changing my prose because I feel like my prose is decent, and if I fuck with it, I'm only gonna make it worse. So
I think you have to. I think you have to play with it. Now, maybe play with it in a short story first if you want. I don't really like short stories. They're a pain in the ass, and then nobody buys them. You'll get a couple of bucks for them, and it's not really worth my time anymore. So I tend to I have an idea and I write the whole fucking book, and then find out afterwards whether or not it worked.
Yeah.
I would say it is absolutely worth your time to play with prose, and read read some of the prose monsters. Anna Smith Spark, read her Empires of Dust stuff because it's insane. She writes, it's poetry. It's
dark, I read her books.
And it's so good. Mark Lawrence, like that dude knows how to put together a sentence. There's something about the way his brain works, and I read his stuff and I'm always like, fuck, like how did he do that? So yeah, I would say, play with your prose a bit.
Okay. Anna Smith Spark, I did read her Court of the Broken Knives, and like her prose is just fucking otherworldly.
Yep.
And it's such a unique voice. And I was like, man, it almost like took me out of the book because I was like, this is just such different than what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a slug to read her book, but I did get through it. And yeah, and she's also got a pretty dark imagination as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So it did scratch that grimdark itch because I'm kind of a fucking sadist when I read. I like that dark shit. Out of all your book babies, do you have a favorite,
Oh,
or
for
they
sure.
all either? Okay,
Oh no,
which
it's like children. You actually do have a favorite. You're just not supposed to tell people. Blackstone Heart is my baby. That is the first story I ever wanted to tell. It's the book I tried to write in the 90s and failed because I was a lazy, drunken shit. Um, and that is the story that stuck with me for decades, that kept bugging me until I wrote the damn thing. And yeah, Blackstone Heart, hands down, is my baby.
did you like during those decades that you're mulling around with it? Did you tweak it at all in your head, like, oh, I should make these go to here, or did you have the story all written out? You just had to put pen to paper.
Yeah, I knew the story, and things changed between
Yeah,
my first attempt to write it in the 90s and when I actually sort of decided to write it in 2016, 2015. I can't remember. So stuff changed because I changed. There's you you know when you're in your late 40s, you're a different dude than when you're 20.
right.
Sort of you approach stuff differently. I'd learned a lot about pretty much everything. So for sure it changed.
All right, perfect. Well, before we go, where can people pick up your books? The all 10 of them with 11 coming out.
Yeah. Easiest is hit up Amazon. All of my stuff is on a Kindle Unlimited. If you're into that, then you can read them for basically free. Ebooks available there, paperbacks, hardcovers. You can get them all through Amazon. Sometimes they appear in other stores. I don't actually know how. Haven't paid much attention to that stuff. Some of them you can get in different languages: German, Russian, Czech, Polish. Kind of depends on which one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. And then we'll see you all next time. Take care.
All right. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks.